All right, gang, if you are watching or listening, Charlie and I are very excited to have with us two authors and editors. Their latest work is called Black Cat Tales, which is an anthology of stories, all with the focal point, the center point of a black cat. So, the black cat, of course, can cause all kinds of emotions in everybody, whether they be good, bad, somewhere in between. And Mark and Francesca have done a great job in putting this anthology together. And Mark Causey, who his story, Lucky the 13th, is in the anthology. And then Francesca Maria, this is the second time she has been on the podcast. She was a guest of Sinister Creature Cons, and she was on a author panel that you guys may remember watching or listening to. And her story, The Land Belongs to the Cats, is part of the Black Cat Tales. But these two together, the team, is very much the team behind composing this anthology. So I know Charlie and I are very excited to talk to them about getting the Black Cat Tales out there, and then just like spooky stories and writing and everything that goes into making a cool horror story, whether it be part of an anthology or maybe something a little bit longer. But guys, welcome very and thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you. We're glad to be here.
Woohoo.
Right on, man. Charlie, I know you are part of one of the same authors groups and Francesca, and you were very excited that she had a new project, and you were, Charlie was very, stoked that we were able to get this all worked out and we could do this together.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm big fan of Francesca's. Um, Francesca actually has been writing stories since she was just Francesca, like 5 or 6 years old, writing horror stories. Yeah.
6 years old, yeah.
Yeah. And she also is the author of the collection of short stories, They Hide, Short Stories to Tell in the Dark. And that was published by Bridget's Gate Press, and it debuted on Amazon as the #1 bestseller in horror anthologies. And she's the co-chair of the group that I belong to, as Jim said, the San Francisco Bay Area Horror Writers Association. And Mark and she have been a team for about 30 years, guys?
Yeah, officially, let's see, we've been married 29. Business partners for probably a good 25 of those. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Well, that leads me to my next question, because I know you were both involved in creating the comic Black Cat Chronicles. Mm-hmm. Was the new book in any way inspired by that comic, or what is the connection, if any, between those two?
Well, black cats are a theme across all the projects that we work on. And so inspired by our loving cat, Agnes, who was with us. She was with us for 19 years. She inspired the name of our comic book store. So we had a comic book retail store for 19 years also, named Black Cat Comics. And then so Black Cat Chronicles, that just seemed like the best name for a comic book series. And of course, we had to just keep that theme going. So we went with Black Cat Tales for the name of the anthology.
Oh, how cool. What was each one of your roles in publishing and editing the new book? Do you have defined roles? Like, are you in charge, Francesca, of reading the stories, or do you both share that responsibility?
We shared most of the responsibilities. We each read all of the stories that came in. And we evenly split the vast majority of things. Certain things lent themselves to each of our skill sets. I was a little more of the copy editor type. She was a little more of the formatting software person. But by and large, we split everything kind of 50-50, mostly because we wanted each of our eyes on every story. We wanted to make sure that both of us had input on story selection. Both of us had equal input on the arrangement of the stories, on all the parts that really mattered. We wanted to both feel like we were, equally contributing and had the most input.
Yeah.
With that, do you guys have a cap going in, or are you just putting every good one that you come across that gets submitted? Like, how do you guys, kind of manage the anthology length, or do you find that you have to?
Yes, no, it started with we had a very rough 39. We wanted 3 13s. And so it roughly boiled down to 26 stories and 13 poems. So we could have this 3 13s thing, which was obviously part marketing or fun or whatever you'd want to say, but it also gave us a bit of a framework that allowed us to say, this isn't, as you say, we're not going to publish every single good story that we get. But we wanted to have a kind of rough number and a rough guideline, and it worked out pretty much exactly like that.
That's pretty cool. It was able to fit, like, you know what I mean? 'Cause that, I imagine, probably took a little bit of work on the editing side to find the works to get it to that point. You know what I mean?
Sure.
We had almost 500 submissions for those 39 slots.
Wow.
But what was cool about that is we got authors from all over the world, all walks of life, people that have never submitted stories before, never had anything published, to people that have been published for decades. And what's nice about our selection, it was kind of blind. Like, we didn't look at, folks' backgrounds or bios or anything like that. We just looked at the stories raw. And the ones that kind of made the cut, once we then started doing a research on the authors, it was a beautiful kind of diverse array of authors. Again, some of them have never been published before. Some of them have been published multiple times. We've got folks from Africa. We've got folks from Japan. We've got folks from the UK, Canada, and Australia, as well as quite a few in the United States.
That's pretty cool. It was, with that much diversity, was there a section of those stories that maybe didn't make this book that you guys held on to, that you're like, okay, if there's a Black Cat Tales Volume 2, these are some that maybe we revisit for consideration?
We were very fortunate to receive a huge number of great submissions. Obviously, you want to have the best stories possible, and as she said, we wanted the widest range of stories, genres, all that kind of thing. And so, yes, it was a nice problem to have too many great submissions than we could fit into our book. We didn't necessarily hold on to them, I should say. But we definitely left a door open with some of the other creators and the different things. Should the demand arise for a sequel, yes, some of those stories would definitely be in consideration.
Right on.
Jim and I have done this so long that we're almost like of one mind, because he just asked you a couple of things that I had jotted down that I was going to ask you. One was, is there going to be a volume 2? And he's talking about the submission process. And my question would be, for both of you, actually, as writers, how difficult is it, being a writer yourself, when you go and evaluate somebody's story and see if it's a right fit? How difficult is that to say, oh, gosh, I like this, but it's really not right? To be honest with you, Francesca, when you had the open call, I thought about writing something and submitting it. And then I was going, oh, I puts her on the spot if she sees. I don't know. Did you guys do blind submissions, or did you do just, did authors include their names on their submissions?
Yeah, they did. But we looked at everything objectively. And, Mark looked at a lot of authors that he doesn't know. So I might know them, but he doesn't. Yeah. And so for him, everything was blind. He didn't really know any of the names.
Oh, okay.
And so a lot of times he would actually pick out, all of the known authors that are friends of mine, and he'd be like, "You should check these out." I'm like, "Oh, I know that person," but it was an honest submission. So we had plenty of friends who submitted, their stories to, and most made the cut, but a few didn't, and that was hard to send those rejection letters out.
Yeah, I would imagine. Yeah. I was afraid of getting one. That's why I didn't submit.
I would say, though, you asked about like as a writer or the submission process, it really on one level is just as simple as, did you love the story?
Right.
If I love the story, then I love the story. And
Right.
And so, and obviously, there's from the editor standpoint, you go back and you do a little of this, a little of that, or you ask the writer to tweak this, tweak that. But generally speaking, as I say, the submission process was really that simple. Was do I love it? Not just like, is it really good? Do I like it? Is this or that? The characters developed. Did I love the story? Yes, I love the story. Check this out. Did you love it? We loved it. Let's go with it.
Yeah. And so I grew up on anthologies, and my favorite anthologies are themed ones. And so like my home library is filled with like, a vampire volume where we've got authors from around the world giving their take on a specific theme. And so the stories that I chose, at least on my list, were, seeing black cats in a different light, ways you hadn't seen before, not just as the witch is familiar, not just as stealing the baby's breath, but something really unique that they add to the table. Because black cats, there's a lot of great material there. They're so mysterious. They're so kind of ethereal and mystical.
Yeah.
So a lot of the stories really kind of push the envelope of what does it mean to be a black cat, and kind of the love affair and the mystique that we have around black cats.
Sure.
Cool.
The whole thing with it being a black cat, I'm imagining that your guys' cat that you had for 19 years was a black cat.
Correct.
How did you guys come about your black cat, or did you have her since she was a baby?
She was a gift. Got her as a tiny kitten. Oh boy, there's all kinds of time. It's a long story. To make long story short, got her as a very tiny kitten. She was a gift to my roommate. My roommate brought her home from work, and the kitten immediately just attached to me for some reason. Just warmed up my dead vampire heart. And love at first sight and all that kind of thing.
What a nice memorial to her that you guys have, themed your bookstore and the comic and this anthology, and all generating from your love of your black cat. I think that is so cool.
And she really brought us together. So we were friends before we started dating. And as his friend, I'd see him just care for this tiny kitten that was not weaned from its mom yet. It shouldn't have been in his possession yet, little Agnes. But she just clung to him, and she would like even suckle on his ear, like nurse on his ear at night. But just seeing how warm he was towards her, how caring he was towards her, I'm like, there's something about this guy that I like. So I give her credit for bringing us together as well.
And I would chime in that we already knew this. Everybody has the connection to their pet or to their, everyone has had a special animal in their life.
If they're lucky.
If they're fortunate. And
Sure.
And so aside from the mystical allure and the coolness and the pop culture, aside from all the things that everybody thinks is cool about black cats, there's also this level of personal connection. And I think the book taps into that a little bit. The creators, the writers of all these stories tap into that a little bit.
That's right.
Like I say, most, if not all of these stories have the cool cat aspect, but also have this personal connection aspect to the cat that cat lovers know, pet lovers know, animal lovers know. That's a part of it.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, wait, we're supposed to be discussing horror. This is getting awfully warm and fuzzy.
I know, right?
So
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, like, you say you grow up on an anthology, so it kind of answers the question: do you prefer the shorter story versus the longer story? I guess in a way, the anthologies that you kind of appeal to all are in a way their own long story, with them all having this connection between them all. But what is it, Francesca, for you? Mark, you can answer this too, but the shorter story compared to like a longer novel, what is it that appeals to you? Is it like the sense of you get like a full story in that little chunk and you can stop? Like, what was it that appealed to you guys about the anthology?
Well, for me, I do have a short attention span, and I'll be perfectly honest. There's few novels and few authors that I just can't wait to read 300 to 600 pages.
Yeah.
For the most part, a short story, it's a specific art form to be able to write beginning, middle, and end in a short amount of time and capture the reader and convey atmosphere, convey a plot, convey the character. So it's actually it's kind of looked down upon in writers' world, but I find it to be a real challenge to write a short story as opposed to something of longer length. And for anthology specifically, what I love about it is, again, not just different authors' take on a specific theme, but it's a great way to be introduced to new authors. So I learned about, Billy Martin, previously named Poppy Bright, all kinds, Bentley Little, all kinds of phenomenal horror writers through anthologies. And then I love the short story, and then it makes me go search out more of their works. And so we wanted to try to emulate that in the anthology, especially since we've got about, a handful of authors who've never been published before. So hopefully there's a story or a poem in here that captures the reader enough to want to go see more of this person's work.
For my part, I start out, I'm a comic book guy. And so I was born and raised all my life on 10 to 15 minute entertainment intervals. I love comic books. I love cartoons. And so for me, part of it's that I just like the short, choppy, get to the point kind of aspect. As an editor, as a writer, as a reader, all the things. One of the things I really like about anthologies is the diversity of style in one book. One reason I like short stories, like she said, part of it's attention span. Part of it, I like the resolution of the whole story and getting on to the next story. But it's also, again, in the span of one book, I can read a story about Atlantis, a story about space, a love story, a horror story, all the things. And so like a buffet, you can get a little taste of this, a little taste of that. And by the end of the book, you've had all the different things that you enjoy.
Would you guys say that applies to Black Cat Tales?
I would hope so. I hope so. We set out. It is horror dominant, I think. But we set out to have a range of things. There's some sci-fi. There's some true to life. There's I would say, is there romance? I don't know if there's a romance story, but just to say, yeah, there's a range of genres, a range of styles. I like to point out, Francie's story in the book has a different writing style than you usually see. So
say the word. Can you say it?
Epistolary.
Nicely done. He's been practicing.
I'm a comic book guy. We don't have words like epistolary in comic books. But yes, I would like to think that the reader would find that kind of range in the book for sure.
The reviews have been coming back that way too. Like, it's very satiating. We've had a couple of great reviews say that they're going to go back and read the poems and the stories again and again. So a lot of folks have been giving us really great feedback on it so far.
Cemetery Dance. That's a big one. I read that review. That was fantastic.
Great review.
Wow. Yeah. Congratulations. on
It
that
was
one.
flattering to get
Thank
it
you.
from them. I'd have to say
Yeah.
it was a great review, but just to get a bad review from them would have been fine. They're like, look, they read our thing.
To get any review,
Right.
but it was a great one. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
We know that Francie became very interested in horror because she lived in a haunted house when she was growing up, and she told that story. I believe she told that story during the Sinister Creature Con convention panel as well. So everybody's going to be able to hear that story too. But Mark, what about you? Have you been a horror guy from a very young age, or is this Francesca's influence which has steered you in that direction? Where did you find your interest in horror?
I'm definitely influenced by Francesca for sure. I would have, as again, I'm a comic book guy. I'm a superhero guy. I started probably originally as a science fiction guy. Still love sci-fi. All that being said, Frankenstein is one of my first loves. You've got all the Universal horror stuff back there. The original Frankenstein thing hooked me as a little kid. And of course, you could talk about that being sci-fi, different things, but that's where horror began for me. I'm a big monsters guy, and so it started with that. Like a lot of people, like Lauren, one of the authors in our book, I have a big thing for graveyards and cemeteries. To be honest, horror movies scare me and horror books scare me. So I'm one of the sissier horror fans out there. But though I also think that makes me good for the genre because I'm easily scared.
You're our target audience.
Yes, I'm your target audience. But again, I'd have to say she contributes to a lot of that. She's gotten me very much into this horror thing. You're a great group of people. You're scary and terrifying because you're also nice and fun. Horror people are a great group.
It does seem to go hand in hand. I don't know why, but I found that to be true as well.
I think it's because we work out our stuff in our work, right?
That's
and so we go to those
true,
dark places, we explore our darkness within us and put it on the page. And so that leaves us nothing but light.
There you go. It's a perfect description.
Charlie, you have had your own success with short horror stories, having them appear as audio dramas on in podcast form, and having them published by several anthologies. So you guys are kind of connected in that way, that you both short horror story authors, and your names are both very centered around the anthology world, the short horror stories. I With that, writing these stories, I wanted to ask you guys, do you guys find it challenging in your work to pack, the scare into a short horror story at first, or does it very much just kind of flow naturally for you guys?
Do you want to go first, Charlie?
A lot of times I'll have just like a germ of an idea, and then everything seems to develop when I sit down and start to write it. So everything kind of comes together. And it's like it's all up there and it's all kind of moving around, and I'll have like the center idea. And then when I start to write it, it's almost like it writes itself. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but I usually let the characters evolve and they show me the direction that they're going to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's kind of what. And there have been stories that I've written before, short stories, where I had this really good idea and I thought the atmosphere and the buildup was really, really well done, but I don't think I put enough punch into the scare part. So I've actually gone back and I've rewritten the section that had that was supposed to have the most impact and provide the greatest scare. I've had to go back and kind of jazz that up a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's fair. I think that, anybody, whether it be script or story, they go back, I think, for the most part, and jazz it up, or at least read it again or whatever.
I find I don't have to go very far to find really scary stuff. Because I grew up in the haunted house, it's very accessible to me to be able to write something pretty scary in a short amount of words. What helps me kind of get the story done and out and finished is a deadline and like a submission open call. And so there's always, open calls for things. And sometimes just reading a submission call really inspires me to get the story going. And sometimes I'll dream about it. Like I have one story that's looking for a home right now, but I had this completely fleshed out story in my dream. And I woke up and wrote it from start to finish. And it's perfect. Like I got to edit it a little bit, but it's pretty much word for word what happened in my dream. So I get a lot of my inspiration from dreams, a lot of inspiration from just open submission calls, whether I even like submit my story to that call or not. Just reading about it gets my kind of brain juices going, and I just start writing. And much like Charlie, I'm a pantser, not a plotter. And so one of my favorite quotes from Stephen King is he just takes dictation. And so I feel the same way. Like I'll just start writing, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, and I'm the first reader.
Yeah.
And so I want to just keep writing just to see what happens at the end. And then in the second and third drafts, I'll look at it and say, how can I make it punchier? Is the scare where I want it to be? Is it too much, too little? And so that's where the finesse and the fine tuning comes in the second and third drafts.
Now, one thing I didn't know about you, Francie, was that you're a psychic medium.
I am.
You said that influences your work. So my question was, how does that influence your writing? And does that mean that Mark can't get away with anything without you knowing about it?
True. He's got stories about that actually, but yes.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, I have and we all have this ability. I'm nothing special, to be honest with you. I just spend a little bit more time and effort kind of working on this muscle than other people do. But because I'm able to tap into the other side, it's like another world that I can find inspiration in. One of the things I do, which is not very common, is I'm a psychic detective as well.
Oh, wow.
Which means if there's a cold case, so a missing person, if we don't know how somebody passed away, I'll get clients asking me to help find a body or understand who was involved in the death, if it was a murder. And so I go to very, very real, dark places to do that kind of work. And it's kind of circular in that it helps to inspire my horror writing. But if I didn't have the horrific brain that I do to write horror, I wouldn't be able to imagine the horrific things that actually happen in real life. So they kind of help and feed each other in a way, and influence each other in a way.
It kind of opens you up to the things that are around you more so than other people would be.
That's right. That's right. I've got so I teach it as well. And I've got a lot of colleagues that are psychic detectives. And a lot of times if the real life case is horrific beyond imagination, I will get the info, but my colleagues won't. And it's usually because I can allow myself to go to the really, really dark stuff or they don't. And so again, being a horror writer opens me up to the possibilities of the worst things people can do to each other, which then opens up my world to what's possible on the psychic detective side.
Got it.
So my question to you is, this is, I would say having this conversation with someone who hasn't experienced the things you're experienced, they'd look at me like you're crazy. But I've had, the privilege of being able to kind of go to some pretty unique places. New Orleans, Salem, Southern California. Yeah, but my background really has put me in a mindset of being pretty much what was tried to be ingrained in me, being the opposite of that, and that resulting in me trying to find, the most like open-minded paranormal experiences or religious experiences, right? And I have had these things happen to me in my life, as recently as the house that my wife and I live in.
Mhm.
But it's through meeting these people that I talked to one person, and he, kind of came back through his paranormal research, and he said, is your house haunted or are you haunted?
Yep.
And instantly, it's almost like having a past life experience. Like instantly, these kind of memories flooded in to me. Um, I can remember being in a crib and seeing these weird fucking faces. This is like before I was able to speak,
Mhm.
which is weird, but it's a super vivid memory.
Mhm.
I can remember my parents' ventilation. They had floor ventilation. It's an older house. And for the longest time, it's like something out of the fucking Conjuring movie. I have these vivid memories of being a kid and hearing people like having fucking house parties or just conversations or listening to TV in the ventilation and then looking down the hallway and my parents being snoring and it being just fucking pitch black.
Yeah.
And long story short, this shit has like followed me everywhere I go.
Mhm.
And that's just kind of fucking weird to like wrap your mind around. So my question is, I always trust people more than I trust myself. And having these experiences, and I mean, shit, man, the psychic detective, that's some heavy fucking stuff,
Yes.
Francesca. But did you like this ability? Has it kind of just followed you since for as long as you can remember?
Yeah. So first thing, to your experience, if it's something like that that's been following you your whole life, you're probably a medium, right? And so you might think about flexing those muscles and opening that up and learning about that yourself so you can control it. When you go from house to house to house and you still feel like you're being followed by spirits or you sense things around you, chances are you're most likely a medium yourself, Jimmy. So you might want to look into that. And the second part of your question was?
Have you been like?
Yeah.
No. So I am not a born medium. So most mediums that you see like on TV, they were born that way. I was trained to be a medium. I've had paranormal experiences my whole life, but so did everybody in the household, and we're not all mediums. And so it was more about how it evolved for me. It's a kind of a long story, but the short version is the other work that I do is holistic healing. And over time, I started to sense and see spirits around the table when I was working with my clients because I found out they needed to heal from a grieving heart. And so when that started happening more and more, then I started training more specifically. There's a place in England that's like Hogwarts. It's called the Arthur Findlay College. And it's a place up in the middle of England. And it's all about training psychic mediums. And you go there and you do magic. And so I trained there pretty extensively and trained with a bunch of different well-renowned psychics here in the United States and in England to kind of fine-tune my skill sets. But no, it's not a natural gift. So it's really hard for me to do this work because it's not something that comes easy and naturally, but it's something that I really love doing. And I love seeing the results of, healing and helping people at the end of the day.
So you're saying that there's a Hogwarts that exists that's not created by like this antichrist figure,
Uh-uh.
and this is a real deal that people can go to.
Yeah, so spiritualist churches are a big deal in England. So if you go back to seances, you go back to World War I, when a
Right.
lot of people were losing their loved ones to war, that's kind of the birth of spiritualism, where people would go to mediums and have seances to talk to their loved ones who were lost in the war. And so it's still, it is a religion over there, it's called spiritualist church. I'm not a religious person, so I'm not part of the organization officially, but I went there to train, and it's pretty amazing.
Wow.
Jimmy will be on the first plane.
Yeah, I mean,
Good.
He's on his way. I know him.
I mean, that's just you're laying heavy stuff on us, man.
Yeah.
I
There's a lot in the onion, which is Francesca. They're peeling off the layers and finding out more and more.
to connect it to the folks watching or listening that don't think they're psychic, don't think they're mediums, and then honestly to throw an olive branch out to the skeptics and to the whatnots. When we were doing the research for Black Cat Chronicles, our comic series is True Tales of Terror narrated by a black cat. To make my long point short, you don't have to believe anything. You don't have to feel anything. You don't have to know anything to be in creepy places and have creepy experiences.
Right.
When we were in Edinburgh, Scotland, we took this underground tour that I won't go all into, but it's all about the plague and different things. And when you're I don't know, 50 feet underground, and then some guy's telling you this just horrific story about horrific things that really happened to people.
For sure.
I don't need to feel a tap on my shoulder. I don't need to hear the spooky voice to be creeped out and to feel the scares and to feel all of that. And so just to put it out there that someone with these gifts and someone with these talents can infuse their art with this extra layer of creepy. But if you don't have those experiences and you don't have those talents, you can still feel the creepy through the stories and through the movies and through the things that people like her do.
No, for sure. And there's one thing I will say about that, and I'm sure it is a testament to your guys' comic book and your guys' anthology, as far as getting all of different horror fans to want to read it. Is there is definitely different kind of like, this place is haunted energy. I have been on in a place that it was revealed to us supposedly there was some kind of demon or dark spirit at this place, and before that was beknownst to us, the air was like thicker than the most humid Florida air I had ever been in. It was a trip. And this was in fucking Northern California. There's no place that should be happening.
Yeah.
I have been in England, and the energy in the church, like I studied theater, and so I'm sure part of that was just kind of my wanting it to have this kind of energy in there. But the energy that I felt at getting to see where Shakespeare was buried, it just felt like powerful, if that makes sense. And then there's like shit that like happens at our house, and our house that we live in, it's just haunted, and it's been haunted since the first time that I hired a medium that had no idea who we were, my roommate and I at the time. And she was saying that it likes being around you two because there's not as many dogs here now. And I'm like, lady, there's no way you knew that the person who lived here before us bred dogs. There's just no possible way. And it's like shit like that, that you can like have an appreciation for the differences. And it's stuff like, cool horror anthologies that, get you to have an appreciation for the different horror differences in the literary world.
There's something with your land, Jimmy. I'm picking up on it's not a traditional haunting of someone who passed in the place you're living in previously. It's the land itself that your house is on that has some energy that's residual and also maybe some conscious energy as well.
That is what the spirit told the medium when we were there. This house is not, I mean, it's
Not
funny.
that old, right?
Well, it's funny because I just saw this meme of someone saying that their house isn't that old, and the meme was like shitting on them because their house was 2022, and it was like, your house is 23 years old, stop saying it's not that old. And I was like, this house I want to say is 2000-ish. I'm like, damn, it's 25 years old. Like, I gotta stop saying it's not that old. In the scheme,
That's true.
I'm 41, but like, so to me, it's not that old, but shit, it is 25 years old. But yes, when we did the medium thing, that was the thing, that my roommate and I, and long story short, before I met my now wife, my then roommate was living with me, and he and I were having these events happen to us, and it escalated to a point where I was sleeping and I heard, like, and when someone talked so closely in your, it's like the ASMR.
Mhm.
And it's like you can feel fucking like whiskers on your cheek.
Yeah.
What my wife always says, but my face isn't touching hers. That shit happened to me. And I was like, what the fuck? Why are you coming into my room in the middle of the night and whispering in my ear? And so that was like number 5 weird, creepy thing that had happened to me. Because waking up at 2 o'clock in the morning to that, and then shooting in bed and no one being there is a eerie feeling. And he was having the similar shit. He said the same thing happened, but he was napping, and the person said it's time to wake up. I'm like, okay, we need to talk to someone. And she, at the end of the day, said that whatever this is from like way back before this was,
Yeah.
subdevelopment.
Agreed.
And they, however, this person, passed away, told her at the time, now whether or not the spirit's the same spirit, but that spirit that night told her that they had died, and they just didn't want to leave. And whatever the next step for them was, they did not want to leave this area, and anytime that it's freaked my wife out, and anytime that it doesn't really, knock on wood when I say it doesn't really freak me out anymore, but anytime I've said stop, it stopped. And so, it hasn't really done anything other than, freak us out occasionally. But if you say stop it, please, it'll stop.
Wow. I'm not coming over to your house anymore, Jim.
Did we lose? That's. Are you guys there?
Oh, we missed it.
Yeah.
So your ghost was messing with your internet there, Jimmy.
Yeah.
It's interesting. It sounds like there's more to it than what the medium said. So maybe you and I can talk offline and I can tune into a little bit more for you. It feels more ancient than someone who passed away recently in the house. It feels tied to the land, which might be an indigenous spirit of sorts.
It's pretty wild, man.
Yeah.
You aren't that far away. I would love for you to come out.
Maybe for the next Sinister Creature Con in October.
I mean,
yeah, for sure.
With you in doing that, would you ever do a book just kind of based on your experiences with the other side? Would you, because you mentioned briefly about teaching or trying to help people open up their mediumship skills. I would imagine that I've dabbled in tarot. The tarot thing is fascinating to me because I've talked to several people who study tarot, just memorizing what they all are, whether or not you're 100% faking it. The fact that you memorized all 52, or at least at the worst case scenario 52 different bullshit definitions that you can act like you know what you're talking about no matter what the card is, right? That in itself is a shitload of work. And so in studying tarot and talking to people who know this stuff, it's all suggestive. It's all kind of where your mind's eye is. So I would be curious to get your mind's eye through these experiences, and like as an author, as a storyteller, to see them shaped into these these narrative experiences. It would be really cool, because I will say I love paranormal research, but a lot of the paranormal researchers, when you read their books, they're kind of boring. I'm not like I'm trying not to throw shade, but they read like a textbook. You know what I'm saying?
They're not writers. Yeah.
Right. And so to have a writer first write the experiences that are very much, definitely in my opinion, these real true experiences, I think would appeal the whole community to another community, for lack of a better term. You know what I mean? Another subset of readers.
Well, I appreciate that. I took part of my childhood experience and wrote it's fictional, but it's kind of autobiographical story in my collection, They Hide, Short Stories to Tell in the Dark. It's called My Brother Andy, and it talks about what it was like growing up in the haunted house that I grew up in. But I have written nonfiction as well for my other work. I've got a book called Why Are You Sick? Practical Tools to Wellness. And I'm working on a second book right now on kind of life lessons. But you're intriguing me about maybe a third book on, now that I've done enough of my paranormal work and the cases, I've traveled all over the world doing the psychic detective work, working on pretty famous cases. So I might, noodle on that. Maybe there's a third book in there somewhere.
Man, I sure think so.
Gosh, I'd certainly buy it. It sounds fascinating.
Thank you.
Well, man, I am very intrigued to check out Black Cat Tales. I can show you real fast. She's sleeping. But I have an appreciation of cats now, as we found our kitty on the set of our latest film. She like literally ran to me and then ran to my wife.
Oh, how sweet. She adopted you.
That's how that works.
So
Hi, cutie.
That's Snickers.
Hi, Snickers.
Beautiful.
Love.
And yeah, we literally took her home from where we filmed. We had this big bonfire shoot. It was meant to be. But
love it.
Where can everybody find, Black Cat Tales, Black Cat Chronicles, and anything else that you guys are working on or have already out and available?
So you can find Black Cat Tales at any bookstore. You can look online on our website, which is black-cat-publishing.com. There's pre-order links to wherever you can buy books. You can ask your local bookstore to carry it as well, your local library to carry it. For the Chronicles, it's a little bit of a different story. So getting our comic book out more broadly has been a bit of a challenge. We do have the trade that we're going to be hopefully announcing in October. And so by October, the collected all 4 issues will be ready and hopefully as available in stores more broadly in October. But until then, a lot of the Bay Area comic book stores have the single issues, and we're going to a lot of different conventions this year. GalaxyCon, we're going to do San Francisco Fan Fest in November. And so you can always, and Sinister Creature Con, hopefully in October. So you can always, pick them up from us directly or on our website.
Awesome, man. Well,
Great.
I thank you guys so much for coming on. I would love to have you on to talk more, horror writing. Love to have you on to talk, just paranormal, experiences. So whenever you guys are around and wanting to jam, you just let us know. We will always love talking with you and hearing about what you got going on, man.
Wonderful.
Appreciate it. Love
Thank
to be
you.
here. We'd love to come back. Thanks so much.
Anytime. Thanks so much.